Peter Greenberg's live global travel update is presented to you by Air Canada, connecting the world with more than 1,000 daily flights to 180 destinations and 6 continents.
Hello, everybody. Peter Greenberg here. Happy Friday, wherever you happen to be, the first Friday of June of 2025. Coming to you today from a historic hotel here in London, the Langham. Opened in 1865. It's celebrating its 160th birthday. Then considered Europe's first truly grand hotel. I mean, think about this. When this hotel opened, it had electricity. It had running water with great water pressure. It had an elevator. I mean, these were game changers back in 1865. Lots of great stories here because this hotel is located literally spitting distance from the BBC. In fact, at one point, the BBC owned this building and used it as a broadcasting center as well. Where I'm sitting right now was bombed away in World War II. The Luftwaffe took out a lot of this hotel. It was later built back up. And of course, today it's in extremely great condition, considering the fact that it is a true 5-star hotel. And we're happy to be here talking to you from London today. Lots of stuff to talk about on our global travel update. Let's start off with Trump's latest ban, the largest number of countries ever banned for travel in our history. 19 separate countries, most of which you don't go to. Afghanistan, Burma, otherwise known as Myanmar, Chad, the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, the Sudan, Yemen, you get the picture. He's also severely limiting travel for citizens of Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Togo, Turkmenistan. Name the travel minister of Turkmenistan, why don't you? And Venezuela. So that's the latest. Will that have an impact on you? Not right away. But remember, it does have an impact on airline scheduling and where they place their equipment. So it may have an impact on you. We will watch that. Now, earlier this week, and we talked about this last week, a couple of airlines got caught. A couple of U.S. airlines got caught discriminating against solo travelers. This is not on every route or every flight, but on a number of selected city routes, city pairs. If I'm traveling by myself, the fare might be $443. If I take a significant other, it drops to $223 each. How'd that happen? It's called algorithms. And how can we discriminate against business travelers who we feel on those routes will mostly be business travelers who what? Have to travel. So a number of websites did their homework and found out, yeah, it was going on. United, American, and Delta. No airline would comment on it, but a funny thing happened once the word got out. Somebody in those airlines went back in to their internet and their websites and scrubbed out those fares. They no longer are there. The point is they were trying to get away with it. We don't know for how long. Somebody figured it out. And so I'm happy to report that at least in the cases that we looked at now, those fares are no longer in effect. And we'll stay on top of that. You know, it's remember the old days where you had a required Saturday night stay? It's the same thing. They were discriminating against business travelers who wanted to leave on a Monday and come back on a Thursday. They didn't want them to get a leisure fare. They wanted them to pay a business fare. And that's how the old dreaded required Saturday night stay went into effect. In most cases now, that's a thing of the past. A lot of airlines are selling one-way tickets, and there's no required Saturday night stay that I know of right now. So be thankful for at least some small favors in that regard. Okay, now there's something I've got to talk about here. We talked about it last week and the week before, but the U.S. Department of Justice has just cut a deal, a non-prosecution deal with Boeing, stemming back a number of years on something that Boeing has already pleaded guilty to. Let's go back to the Boeing 737 MAX and those 2 terrible crashes that killed 346 people. There was overwhelming evidence. I've seen it. It was introduced as a matter of public record in the court, showing that Boeing intentionally misled investigators, covered up, didn't want any inspections of a system that no one knew how to operate or even override, otherwise known as MCAS. It's a flight management system. And in those two cases, in Indonesia and in Ethiopia, the pilots had absolutely no clue how to deal with this or how to override it, and they all died. Boeing had already pleaded guilty to this, and then in 2021, this is after they pleaded guilty, the U.S. Justice Department cut a deal with them, saying, you'll avoid prosecution if you pay a $2.1 billion fine and go on good behavior for 3 years and not repeat this bad stuff you were doing. The families of the victims did not like it. They protested, but that was the deal that happened initially. And then came January of 2024. Remember that Alaska Airlines door that blew out over Oregon? Guess what? Another case of Boeing again. The prosecutors reopened the case. It was all set for trial. In fact, the judge in the case ruled that the families of the victims met the legal definition of crime victims. And then came the election in November of 2024. We have a new Justice Department, a new focus on Boeing. They're the biggest canary in the cage. And the problem is, as America's largest export company, they were making the claim that they were going to be better, they were going to behave well, and that they couldn't afford, and the United States couldn't afford Boeing to go to jail. And so guess what? The DOJ has now cut another non-prosecution deal. This time, Boeing again is going to pay a fine of $2.5 billion and pay wrongful death claims to the families of the victims in excess of $450 million. The families here are livid. They want to go to trial. They want justice. They want closure. This is not right now about the money. Well, the interesting story is that even though the DOJ and Boeing have agreed to this, it's still subject to the judicial review of the judge in the case, Judge O'Connor. The same judge that threw it out the last time and said, let's go to trial, the same judge that said the families have status as true crime victims. Now let's see if he overthrows it again. All I can say is this, and I say this from portfolio. I've seen the evidence. This is a slam dunk case. There should be a trial. You know, if there are not severe consequences, history tells us that bad behavior continues and repeats itself. So let's see what happens. I'm rooting for Judge O'Connor to say, sorry, guys, let's go to trial. Now, he may not do that, but he's the guy who did it before. I hope he does it again. It's just as simple as that. Now, where am I right now? At the Langham. What does Napoleon III, Charles Dickens, Princess Diana, and Winston Churchill have in common? They've all been sitting in the same room I have. A lot of history here and great, great storytelling, which we'll get into, of course, on our radio show that we just taped today. It'll be airing in a couple of weeks. I hope you get a chance to listen. Let's scroll down and say hello to some friends. Jim and Harriet again from Richmond, always number one on the screen. And they're what? But they're not in Richmond today. Oh, no, they are in Richmond today. Priya's watching from Norway, sailing. Amazing. Wi-Fi still works from this remote place. Well, I bet they have Starlink. Speaking of Elon Musk, oh, my God. Don't even go there. Oh, my God. You know what? I don't care if you're red or blue, Republican or Democrat. Every once in a while, it's just fun to watch the circus. This is the circus. These are two 9-year-old egos, bigger than ever, having a fight in the schoolyard. But I love it. Oh, yeah, but so are you, and so am I. And what am I? Oh, it's like, whew. But you got to give Elon credit for Starlink. That actually works. But we're not going to go any further than that today, other than saying I'm enjoying watching the show. And we'll see what happens. All right. Paul is saying hi from Ashland. Sue's saying hi from sunny Bellingham, Washington. Nice to see you. Patty's saying, oh, tea at KP is fun. KP, Kensington Palace? What's KP? Tell me. Melanie is saying hi from sunny Miami. Robin saying hello from Williamsburg. Remember D-Day, that is today. And 2 years ago, you know where I was 2 years ago today? I was on the beaches of Normandy doing our radio show there. And who was my interview guest? David Eisenhower, talking about his grandfather on June 6th, 1944, along with Winston Churchill. What the lessons they learned that day, have they still been applied today? The decisions that they made that changed the course of history. If you've never been to Normandy, it is a humbling experience. To walk at the American cemetery, to take your time, and to think about every one of those grave markers is it's humbling, and it's emotional. But today, when you look out over those beaches, the beautiful coastline, the beautiful beach itself, it's hard to imagine what that must have been like, right? That's 81 years ago. 81 years ago today. And so many of us only saw it in Army newsreel footage that was black and white. I encourage you all, at any time of the year, to go to Normandy and pay your respects. It's, even though you're in a cemetery, it is living history, and I highly recommend it. Thank you for reminding me, Robin. Vivian saying hello from Fort Lauderdale. Evelyn is saying good morning from Denver. Camilla's in Tucson, as Camilla always is. Craig is saying good morning from Newport Beach. Jeff is saying, are you familiar with a Near Me app to arrange transportation from Narita to Tokyo Hotel nonstop? It doesn't appear to be a secure site. It is not a secure site, but it can be a useful app. Okay? But look, if you've got Google Maps, that'll do the same thing. Okay? Okay. Someone here is watching from Omaha. I'm looking forward to the upcoming 2026 Starlux service out of Phoenix to Taipei and Etihad out of Charlotte to Abu Dhabi. Well, Etihad is going to absolutely operate from Charlotte to Abu Dhabi. They're looking to expand their route network. As of Starlux, you know, it's an interesting airline. If you Google it, you'll see what I mean. And they're actually going to try to get service. They're going to try to sustain service and get proper passenger loads from Phoenix to Taipei. Now, if you ask me, the only way they're going to make that work is if they can connect, not just people going to Taipei, but connecting through it. Let's see what happens. Lorena is saying hello from Lansing. Any recommendations for traveling solo to the Galapagos? Yeah, you're not going to be traveling solo to the Galapagos. I mean, you'll be traveling there maybe by plane, but once you're there, you'll be on a small ship that's highly regulated by the Ecuadorian government. You'll make fast friends. You won't be alone. You'll have a great time. Just make sure you're on a ship that doesn't kill you with a solo supplement. You don't want to get double dip there, okay? But remember, under Ecuadorian law, no ship, meaning cruise ship, can take more than 100 passengers, right? And when you go ashore, no Zodiac can take more than 16 at any one time. They really space it out. The Ecuadorians have had rules there since 1959, and they really do work. Okay. Linda's saying, hi from Naples. What's the best way to fly from Malta to Cairo, departing on the last Monday in November? Well, you're not going to be going nonstop. That much I can tell you. The fastest way to go from Malta to Cairo is through Rome. You can also go through Istanbul. Turkish Air flies Malta, Istanbul, then Istanbul, Cairo, or you can fly Air Malta, or if you're really desperate, Ryanair, from Malta to Rome and change planes there, and then do Rome to Cairo. These are not long flights. Remember, Malta is only a 1.5 hour flight to Rome. That's it. Everything is easy and short. Scott's tuning in from Chicago. He's just curious. How many of the travel ban countries have you been to? Hold on, I'm going to tell you. I'll go back to that list. I've been to Afghanistan. I've been to Burma. I've been to the Congo. I've been to, I've been to Haiti. I've been to Libya. I've been to the Sudan. That was an experience. Not been to Yemen. I've also been to Cuba, Burundi, Laos. I've been to Togo. I have not been to Turkmenistan. I have been to Venezuela, but that was a long time ago. So I've been to a number of them. Not necessarily for travel and tourism, but for my job at Newsweek and other long investigative pieces I was doing. And also for NBC when we were down there to interview Castro. I interviewed Castro back in 1978. Fascinating man. Absolutely People forget. This guy spent time in New York. Would you believe he was scouted as a baseball player for the then Washington Senators? He spoke English, but didn't want to do that. He spoke mostly Spanish, but an imposing figure, very tall. You know, all those photos that I saw when I was growing up depicted him as very short. He's not. He was 6'2". And by the time I interviewed him, he was no longer smoking cigars, but he carried one. And to interview Castro is to understand that they would never confirm the interview. And all of a sudden you'd get a phone call at 2 a.m, come now. He'd go on for 3 hours. Really amazing guy. Okay. And I'm not being political here. He was charismatic. He understood the media. He was passionate. And first and foremost, he was a nationalist. To give you some background, when he overthrew the dictator Batista, the very first person he tried to contact was Allen Dulles and John Foster Dulles. The Dulles brothers, one ran the State Department, one ran the CIA. This is for Eisenhower. And they didn't want to talk to him. They ignored him. And he reached out to the US first. And then the Soviets in those days, Nikita Khrushchev, he needed help. He needed economic help. So they gave an oil deal. They did a wheat deal. They did everything they could to basically support Castro. And then, of course, in 1962, the Russians thought it'd be a great idea to put some missiles there. We all know what happened then. But at the end of the day, Cubans love Americans. That is not disputed at all. Okay. Taya wants to know, what's my favorite way to access data abroad? Do you typically get a SIM data card in the countries you visit? No, I don't. I just go on Wi-Fi and I go on the internet like you would do at home. Now, SIM cards to me are vastly overrated. If you're just using your phone, check out the plan that T-Mobile has. It's like 140 countries that gives you local access in terms of no roaming charges. You can buy day passes with Verizon and AT&T. But for me, I'm partial to the T-Mobile plan. But the other ones work too. They're just a little more cumbersome because you're always putting in a SIM. I don't want to open up my phone. I'm just happy doing what I'm doing. All right. Hello, Sam, or Sam Eric, I should say, in Helsinki. Helen saying, watching from home in Del Mar, California, just returned from Virtuoso Inaugural Impact Summit in beautiful Lake Louise. Yeah, this is the time of the year to go to Lake Louise up near Banff. It's unbelievable, and I highly, highly recommend it. And Patty was right, Kensington Palace. That's a good place to have high tea. Rena's saying, next year, visit the American Cemetery in Manila. Oh, yeah. I have been to the American Cemetery in Manila. It's a beautiful place, by the way. Really nicely done. And also humbling. But you're also reminded when you're at the American Cemetery in Manila that more Filipinos died in World War II fighting for us than Americans. People don't know that. And given the Philippines' history with the Spanish and the Spanish-American War, and then, of course, us going in with Subic Bay and Clark Air Force Base, of which both are gone now, it's been an interesting relationship over 100 years, and one that is worth pursuing, considering its strategic location in that region. Remember, when Vietnam War ended, the most forward base we had, other than Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, was Clark Air Force Base in Subic Bay. Those are both gone now. So our westernmost U.S. base, you know where it is? Other than Diego Garcia, which is in the Indian Ocean, is Pearl Harbor. We've shrunk. Okay, I'm not talking about the Army in Korea. I'm talking about the Navy. Okay. Caesar saying hello from Texas. Estrella saying hello from Boston. Any suggestions for summer travel away from the crowds? Could you be more general? I'll try to help you. I'm a huge fan of contrarian travel. So think where you want to go this summer where there's not going to be a crowd. Ready? Look at the Southern Hemisphere. It's their winter. Go skiing in Chile. Hang out in Argentina. Or go even further south in Australia and New Zealand. You might find better deals there. Will the weather be outrageously cold? Not particularly in Australia and New Zealand. You might want to wear a sweater at night. But I love going there. Just like I love going to the Caribbean in the summer, which is considered their off season. It's hotter, but by 5 degrees. Come on, we can all grow up and do that. By the way, speaking of crowds this summer, based on the trade and tariff wars, the numbers I've been talking about over the last couple of weeks are being sustained. Sadly, they're down. Basically, people not visiting the United States from overseas, from numerous locations, a lot of empty seats across the Atlantic. What does that mean? Yes, there will be a little bit of a buyer's market if you want to go to Europe this summer. But remember, not as much as you'd think, because if the Europeans aren't coming to the US, that doesn't mean they're not traveling. It means they've made a decision to go somewhere else, more than likely within Europe. In the US, if we're not traveling, not traveling to Europe, we've also made a decision not to go somewhere else in Europe, but not necessarily not traveling. US domestic travel is going to be booming, meaning airfares and hotel rates are going to go up. And as long as gas prices don't spike, you'll see a lot of people in their cars this summer doing road trips. Okay. Hi, Peter. Nobody says who that. Tim Kelly. Any updates on Southwest and Iceland Air? No, not yet. If anything, it'll be a code share, as I told you before. The CEO of Iceland Air, the CEO of Southwest, recently hinted that they're going to start selling tickets to foreign countries. That's somewhat misleading because the inference was that Southwest would be flying those flights. They are not. Their planes don't have the range, but they're going to code share and get involved, so they'll be able to sell some connectivity. You know, Southwest is an airline that has no interline connections. What do I mean by that? If I'm flying from point A to point B, let's say New York to Chicago on Southwest, and have to connect to American or Delta or United, I have to get my bags, get baggage claim, go back and check in on those other flights and start it all over again. There's no seamless through line checking because there are no interline connections. There are no interline agreements. If the Southwest CEO is telling the truth, they're going to try to find some. Well, I'll let you know what happens. Okay, here we go. Red says, isn't the Langham next to the BBC offices? Yeah, I was talking about that before. Where I am right now was bombed during World War II. Half this hotel was taken out by the Luftwaffe because they were aiming for the BBC, which is literally about 80 feet from where I'm sitting now. So you're absolutely right, Red. Okay, Tim says, T-Mobile is the best. I've been everywhere and had service. Data can be slow. Yep, but it's free. And it's like, 25 cents per call. He's right. It makes sense. Okay, Nancy said, would I travel to South Africa for a safari? You bet. I've done it many times. And remember, take a look at the map of South Africa. There are so many different places to go, not just Kruger National Park, but a number of other places as well. And I would combine it with a trip to either Cape Town or Durban, and then go out for the safari. Absolutely. You can also bookend it and not only go to South Africa, but head a little west and do Namibia too. What a country, and what a great place for safari as well. Okay. Jim and Harry want to know, do I have any plans for China? Sure. I'm back in China about once a year. We broadcast from Shanghai just about a year ago, and we'll probably do it later this year as well. Okay. Kim is saying, I'm going to Nice August 19th to the 26th. Anything I should know? Yeah. Use Nice as your hub. Get on the train. You can take it to Monaco or Villefranche or Cannes on the other side. It's so doable and easy. It will be crowded. It's high season, but the train's the best way to go. All right. Boston Bob is saying hi from Boston. He wanted me to thank him for answering his cruise question on the radio last week. Well, you're welcome, Bob. Bruce Siegel. Mr. Pink Shirt himself, to your point, met with Discover Long Island. They expect a drive boom this summer as overall international travel is 20 to 30% down. There you go. Long Island booming. Okay. Dora says, does Air France have sales coming up for fall travel? They do, but not now. You're going to see sales for fall travel around the 5th of August, 5th to the 6th of August, if history is any indication. Okay? Tim, you know what? You're absolutely right. I'm going to make you a promise. Next week, we're going to put it up for auction. Tim wants to know, did I ever do my Lunch with Peter auction to benefit charity? You're right. We haven't done it. We're going to do it, and it's going to benefit Operation USA. If you look at their website, these guys do amazing work. In the interest of clarity, I'm also on the board of directors of Operation USA, started by Julie Andrews. These guys have done everything from removing landmines, which they're still doing, by the way, in Vietnam and Cambodia, and then providing prosthetic devices for the people who were unlucky to walk on one and getting them back on track. But they've done so many other great work in the areas of natural disasters, earthquakes, floods, tornadoes, etc. And that's what we'll do. So next week we'll announce it. It'll be an auction, and the highest bidder. And I want you, but we're going to start with a high bid to begin with. I'm worth it. But seriously, I want to raise some money for the right people. So Tim, thank you for reminding me. Next week on Global Travel Update, we will do just that. And we'll give it about a 3-week deadline. And then whoever wins gets lunch with me. And we'll sweeten the deal. It'll be lunch with me, maybe not even where you live. The bidding price will include, we'll figure out the airfare, right? Because that's how high the bids are going to have to be. But we'll fly you there. We'll have lunch. How about that? Fair enough? All right. I got Anthony working on it. We'll do it next week. Okay. Now, I have a geography quiz for everybody. Okay, let's see how much you know. Get ready to tune in. Ready? Name the largest continent in the world. And the smallest. No Googling. Just answer now. The longest river in the world. The biggest ocean. The tallest mountain, you know that one. That's Mount Everest. I'm not going to give that one away. The largest desert in the world. All right, those will be our questions for this week. Here we go. The biggest continent, the smallest continent, the longest river, the biggest ocean, and the largest desert. Okay? Anybody want to guess? I'll give you a couple of minutes here. While you're thinking about that, now you're here we go. The largest is Asia. Red got that one right. All right. The smallest, Red got that one right again, Australia. The longest river in the world, if you watch Hidden Uganda on PBS and on Amazon Now with our show that we did, the 1 hour special, you'll know the answer to that. Sue did too. The Nile. But Sue, you got one wrong. I said, what is the largest desert in the world? And you said, the Sahara. Wrong. Anybody else want to jump in? Okay, I'm going to tell you, nobody ever gets this. The largest desert in the world is Antarctica. How about that? Now, next week, I'm going to give you 5 more, one of which will completely blow you away, and nobody gets it right. And I'm not giving anybody any hints. But there's 1 out of the 5 next week that will completely astound you about great little geography stuff that you need to know. And I'm glad that we have a chance to do these little questions. Hey, let's go to a brief update. And a brief update is this. 6th Freedom Flights. Does anybody know what that is? Well, let me help you. I'll tell you what a 5th Freedom Flight is. We've talked about this on Global Travel Update before and also on our show, The Travel Detective. A 5th Freedom Flight is the ability, it's an international agreement that airlines have with countries that allows an airline not based in country A to fly from a city in that country to another city in another country where they're also not based and take passengers en route to where they are based. So, for example, if I want to go from New York to Milan, the 5th Freedom Flight, otherwise known as the secret flight, is Emirates. It goes from Newark or New York to Milan and then continues on to Dubai. If I want to fly from New York to Frankfurt, here's a wild one, Singapore Airlines. Why? Because when you land in Frankfurt, the plane continues on to Singapore, and it does the same thing on the reverse. You can fly Frankfurt to New York on Singapore as well. Those are Fifth Freedom flights. There are many of them. Check out our show, Travel Detective, and the piece that we did. I flew from Buenos Aires to Sao Paulo on Turkish Air. Couldn't get crazier than that, right? Okay, that's a Fifth Freedom flight. So check our website. Anthony's going to post it. You will see the piece we just did on Sixth Freedom flights. That's if you're a really smart traveler. So think about this. If I want to go from New York to Hong Kong, I could take Cathay Pacific. It's an expensive ticket. I could take United with a stop. I could take probably, in the old days, American, but they don't do it anymore. They probably code share with Cathay Pacific. But here's the other way to do it. I fly from New York to Vancouver on Air Canada and continue to Hong Kong on Air Canada. I don't do customs in Canada. I don't have to get my bags in Canada. Everything's checked through. Chances are the plane isn't full, better service, and in many cases, a better airfare. Interesting, right? So many of them. We're talking, all the places that Air Canada flies, that's an example of a Sixth Freedom flight. So check out our website. You will see that. And now let's go to the photo of the week. I like this one for two reasons. One, it's black and white, because when it's a black and white photo that works, it really works. Let's hear it for Larry Babin, who writes, this black and white photo shows the Church of St. Peter and St. Paul in Bluxley, England. This is where the TV series Father Brown is filmed. Didn't know that. So I love this. He waited for the right light. Looks great. And if you think you got a photo that qualifies as the photo of the week, you want to get up right there with Larry, you know what to do. Send it to me, photo contest at petergreenberg.com, and we'll be glad to put it right up there on the screen. Let me scroll down a little faster here. Hold on a second. Okay. Some more people checking in on the largest ocean. It's the Pacific. And no, Karen, it's not the Gobi Desert. Remember, it's Antarctica. All right, now let's go to some questions you sent in during the week. Here's one from Michelle. How do you get last minute discounts for a cruise if someone cancels too late, or if there are any free cruises if someone writes a review? Okay, Michelle, that's not how it works. This is not a quid pro quo situation, right? Oh, listen, give me a free cruise and I'll write a review. That makes you qualified as a bad influencer. And the cruise ships are not going to do that deal, okay? Now, if you're asking about discounts for last-minute cruises, you'll find them. Not the day before the cruise, not 2 days before the cruise, but a week before the cruise, you bet. And you can either contact the cruise line directly or go through a travel agent, and hopefully they'll have those deals. Remember, when we see a downturn in foreign travelers to the U.S., at the beginning of this year, we didn't see that at all with cruise lines. They'd already sold 80% of their inventory for 2025 back in February. However, we are seeing basically a downturn in future travel reservations on cruise ships and an uptick in cancellations as people are worried about the economy and may want to stay home. Empty cruise cabins is revenue that the cruise lines can never recoup once the sun rises. So you will see some last minute flash sales between now and July 15th. Look for it. Okay. Okay. Oh, and Michelle wants to know, do I get all my travel for free? Not even close. Michelle, when we fly here, and I flew here to London, we pay for our tickets, right? When we fly to do one of my television shows, we pay for our tickets, right? Now there's a budget for these shows, and that budget comes, like all television shows, from sponsors and funders. And then we buy our tickets. That's how it works, right? This whole idea of free travel, look, the problem with travel journalism in general is that too many people want to get a free trip, so they can write a review with words, every word ending in ST. Best, greatest, most, loveliest. That's, let's see if I can use that word. Caca. That's what that is. No, you're not going to see me using words ending in ST, and we pay for our travel, right? Either CBS pays for it when I do stories for CBS. We pay for it as part of our budget when I do stories for PBS. You should also know that PBS doesn't pay us anything when we do our shows for PBS. They're just nice and kind enough to air our shows. We have to go out and get sponsors just like everybody else. But we have another rule about that, which might surprise you. Take a look at the sponsors for every show that we do. Our rule is this: no one can sponsor a show that they're in. Why do I say that? Because otherwise it becomes a bad infomercial, right? It's a conflict of interest. We maintain a separation of church and state. So if we're here in London right now, British Tourism did not sponsor the show, nor did they pay us anything, right? And we have to keep that so that when I go on the air and I tell you I like something, it's because I like it. If I go on the air and I tell you it sucks, it's because it sucks, right? Do you know who 98% of influencers influence? Their parents to let them stay in the house. So I hope I answered your question, Michelle. Sorry to react that way, but we're sensitive about that because we take ourselves seriously and hope you do too. All right. Mark says, hey, with all this talk about biometric boarding, does that mean boarding passes are going extinct? What happens if the tech glitches? Well, let me get two questions here. Not only will boarding passes be extinct, I mean, look, AI is moving at, lightning speed. So not only will boarding passes be extinct within the next 3 years, because of biometrics as well, your passport may be extinct. I mean, coming shortly in Europe, they're not even going to be stamping passports, right? When I landed in London yesterday, guess what? I went right, they just recognized my face. I put my passport in, they scanned it. The machine scanned it. I went through an e-gate. I was out in 18 seconds, right? Anybody who's been to London before knows you had to fill out the form, stand in a long line, be interviewed by an official. That was cumbersome and took a long time. Those days are over, thankfully, without security being compromised. But the technology is existing now. It just hasn't been implemented, at least in the biometric realm, to do away with passports. Because they can have as much information on you through biometrics, not just in terms of your iris scan, but in terms of your criminal history or whether or not you have an unpaid parking ticket, you name it, to be able to determine whether or not you'd be allowed into or not into a country. We're just waiting for that technology to catch up in terms of the hardware they need to make it work. That's why the e-gates are so long in getting here in London, but they work. We love it. Okay, let's keep going here. Danielle says, I had TSA PreCheck and Global Entry expire last month. Is it better to renew or go with Clear this time around? No, you got to start with TSA PreCheck. That's what you start with. And get Global Entry at the same time. If you don't, it becomes as part of the package deal. And then you can add Clear on later. Keep in mind that if you have a certain number of credit cards, Chase Sapphire Reserve, Capital One, I think they're Venture X or American Express, your cost for Clear gets covered. It's part of the perks of your membership. So check that out. Okay. Tina says, I'm thinking of doing one of those long-haul train journeys in the U.S. Amtrak. Are they scenic and worth it or just slow? How about this? They're scenic, they're worth it, and they're slow. But do it the right way. Get yourself a rail pass. Amtrak doesn't promote these at all, but they're great. They're good either for 15 days or 30 days, which gives you on and off privileges during that time. So you can take a train from New York to Chicago, get off the train, board it 3 days later, go to Denver, etc. Okay? And the train seats are very comfortable. I learned how to sleep on trains a long time ago. If you plan it right, you can save money on hotels by doing some train rides during the night. However, if you really want to pamper yourself on certain runs, you can buy a sleeper room where you get your own bed, your own desk, your own bathroom, and they throw in meals. And it's not outrageously expensive. And you're just sitting there watching the country go by. If you want to go out of your cabin and go to the dining room for dinner or lunch or breakfast, you do it. But if you're traveling by yourself, that's how to do it. Okay. All right. We've done the photo of the week. Let me just scan down very quickly here. Stay with me, folks. Gina says travel agents know about the cruise deals. They do. You're right, Tina. Go to a cruise-only travel agent. They'll know where the deals are. And now Estrella asked a question that is very sensitive to me for reasons that you'll know right away when I answer it. Here's her question. What do you do with your frequent flyer miles? Are you ready? I frame them. They have the equivalent in my book of Venezuelan currency. Unless I am going to be sitting at home watching Wheel of Fortune for the next year and have time to adjust my schedule 330 days out, which I don't, I have a bazillion miles. I'm never able to redeem them. The airlines just make it too difficult. Do you know how many unredeemed miles there are right now out there? Unredeemed meaning miles that have been earned by you, me, and everybody watching, and all their friends that people have just been unable to redeem. Are you sitting? Are you holding on to something strong? 37 trillion unredeemed miles. What does that tell you about these programs? We're all addicted to them, right? We want to get mileage for everything short of breathing. The airlines love it because they're making you use their credit cards to get 1 mile per dollar spent at 28% interest, may I remind you. The only people making out like bandits are the airlines and the banks, not us. So I suppose if I want to go to Des Moines on a Wednesday in November, I can redeem miles, with all due respect to my friends in Iowa. But you get the point. People join these programs to get to their what? Dream destinations. Good luck. We are working on a story right now that will be in detail telling you about the inner workings of the airline mileage programs, and I hope you'll get a chance to watch it when it comes out. It won't be out for a couple of months, but get ready for it. Hopefully, we'll be helpful. Patty says, "Why don't you donate your miles?" It's the same issue. I do donate miles, but the people I'm donating miles to have the same problem I do: availability. Remember, airlines don't want to displace revenue passengers, right? They want to sell as many seats as they can. I'll give you an example. 10 years ago, Delta only sold 14% of its first class seats, which meant you could upgrade or you could book the flight in first class. Today, Delta sells 89% first class seats. The odds of you getting an upgrade there are slim and there's none. So there's where we are. Okay. Okay. I'm looking through here. I think we're good. How about that? So a couple of reminders. Listen to the radio show this Saturday, meaning tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We're coming from an interesting location, a location where I spent a huge amount of time when I was a correspondent for Newsweek, covering things like Howard Hughes, Gary Gilmore. Am I dating myself, folks? If you think you don't know who Gary Gilmore is, read the Norman Mailer book, right? The Executioner Song. And obviously, you know about the other stuff. Where is this show coming from? Salt Lake City and the annual global convention, the summit of the American Society of Travel Advisors. So listen in. We got a lot of updates on what's going on up there. And of course, want to hear from you as well. So I hope you get a chance to do that. Hidden Uganda, still on PBS, Amazon, and Apple TV. Travel Detective Season 10, airing now. And of course, go on the website that Anthony just shared with you to see my definitive piece on something that you didn't know about: fixed freedom flights. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'll see you on the radio tomorrow. And we're flying out of here on Sunday to do our next global update next week from, of course, an undisclosed location until you tune in. Thanks, everybody. Be safe. See you next week.
Peter Greenberg's live global travel update is presented to you by Air Canada, connecting the world with more than 1,000 daily flights to 180 destinations and 6 continents.